Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies on this show. This episode is one of two Patreon vote winners this month. Why two? Not because we had two votes, but because there was a tie. The vote was a bunch of horror comedies. We already did The Final Girls, we did that earlier in the month. But this episode is going to be The Cabin in the Woods, which is the 2012 satirical horror movie, which is written by Joss Whedon, or co-written by Joss Whedon with Drew Goddard, and Drew Goddard is the director. What's funny about Drew Goddard, which, by the way, both these guys, hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, might I add. But both these, with Drew Goddard, what I think is interesting is, I knew his name from Buffy, right? I knew he was a writer on Buffy, but like, his episodes specifically didn't stand out to me, I don't think, not from memory anyway. So seeing this, I remember being like, oh, Drew Goddard, I wonder what he's like as a director. So not to spoil my opinions, but it's very positive. So we're going to start spoiler free, as we usually do, and we'll warn you before we go into spoilers, and that'll be somewhere in the middle. So, what is Cabin in the Woods? Cabin in the Woods is a movie about a group of friends who are all college age, who get together to go to a cabin for the weekend in the woods. Because one of them's got a cousin who bought this cabin, they go there, and of course creepy things start happening. But wait, there's a control room somewhere underground with scientists like controlling what's happening to them. This is weird. What's going on? Who can say? That's Cabin in the Woods. Tim,
yeah.
do you enjoy Cabin in the Woods?
I mean, it's okay. I don't. Yeah, I'm kidding. It's freaking amazing.
Tim, just for sometimes I don't know your weird opinions. Like, am I going? So I don't know if I'm going to get normal Tim or boy loving Tim. And you know, boy loving Tim is the Tim that would dislike a movie like this. That's boy loving Tim.
I feel like maybe we can call it the boy loving Tim, because boy loving Tim sounds like something different that is maybe could be misconstrued. I'm
okay with that phrasing.
The boy movie loving.
Do you know that MGMT song, Kids?
No.
You don't? Do.
Okay, it sounds familiar.
Yeah, anyway, it's called, the name of that song is Kids. So, you know, someone asked me my opinion about that song once. I said, I love kids. And then I went, oh god, no. Oh, don't say it like that. God damn it. Maybe your movie's something appropriate. They can't be taken the wrong way. But yes, Tim loves boys. So
nope, not in that way. No. This movie though is it's phenomenal. It's you know, God. I mean, if you're watching this, probably a fan of horror, and if you're a fan of horror, you must have seen this. I can't imagine someone who hasn't. But it's so good. It works as a great movie, like on itself, but then as like a horror lover, there's so much like love lettery, you know, fan servicey stuff.
It's funny,
but done in such a fun, smart way.
Yeah, it's like it's got a love letter fan servicey thing, but there's also like a cynical tangent to it. It's like, hey, stop doing the same things over and over again. Do something new, you assholes. There's kind of like a message there as well. Obviously, there's a lot of meta stuff going on. There's a lot of this stuff. That was a very demonic sounding motorbike. For the record, outside. So, I was going to say, oh, you said something just at the start. I said that if you watch this show, you probably love horror. There's at least one person that's commented who says they don't really like horror movies, but they like watching this show. Hey, power to you. Like, I'm fine with that. If you enjoy us rambling on about them and you don't care about them, that's fine. Like, go for it. So first things first, obviously I'm a big Buffy fan, and Angel and Firefly, so naturally I'm a bit of a Whedon fan. And then after that, he did Dollhouse briefly, and then he was kind of missing for a little bit. There was a little vacuum for a little while where he wasn't really, and obviously he was doing Avengers, like this came out the same year as Avengers. Avengers was a couple of months after this, and I knew this because this was one of these movies that had been shelved. It was like completed like 2 years earlier or something like that, and it was sitting on a shelf.
It's a crime that like this was ever like put on hold.
It was apparently something to do with, because at the time MGM were kind of in a dire straits. It was, you know, it was like a financial thing. It wasn't because they saw it and went, oh, this is bad, this won't do well. It was very different. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Chris Hemsworth's in it, and it was like, oh, now Thor's a thing. He's big now. Like, he was a nobody when we made this, and then all of a sudden he's a name. Like, we can promote this with Chris Hemsworth in it. So you get that, but like and I didn't know what to expect, like a horror movie written by Whedon, but obviously it's not a straight horror movie per se. It's got all these other elements to it, but
it's funny, you don't really lump him in as like a horror guy, but I mean, he did Buffy, Angel, which is like, those are very I mean, people might remember it more for some of the comedy or the quippiness or whatever, but no, it's like there's that is like a horror show. There's tons of monsters, and there's some like legitimate like creepy stuff in it from time to time, and he's like fully maybe not like a horror master or something, but he seems to know what he's doing, or at least knows somewhat about the genre.
He doesn't seem to he doesn't like, it's not like I don't think he would necessarily ever make a straight horror movie that's just this terrifying, like, through dread, but he seems to love the genre because he plays with all the toys that come with it. Like, he likes to do that, I guess is how I'd put it. And hey, if there's any movie that I would say is playing with the horror toys, it's this movie. Where it goes later on in the film and stuff. So it is a very funny movie. Like, I mean, the opening, like, is the two guys, played by Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford.
Love Richard Jenkins.
Yeah, I love both these guys. These guys like are hilarious, and I think you got them down in this control room, and they're like them cracking jokes, them treating this like an everyday at the office.
And so actually, this is a great question. That feels like I was just like patting myself on the back. Like, big question.
There was all this anticipation, Tim. Now I'm expecting the best question I've ever heard in my life. Hit me, Tim. Hit me with this. I'm ready. I'm braced.
So when you first watched this, did you have any idea what the premise is, or were you just going in like completely blind?
Blind. I think I was blind. Yeah. I knew there was a satire element, but I had no idea that it was what it was. I remember vividly, so this isn't a spoiler, this is like one of the opening scenes, like after the opening scene down there where it's just the two guys talking about like his baby cabinets and how he's annoyed that everything's baby-proof. And we're introduced to the main like teens and or college students, and they're like getting ready to go on this trip, and they leave in the RV, and the camera goes up to the roof, and there's a sniper on the roof, and he's like, right, they're moving, and I'm like, what the hell is this movie? Like, what's going on?
And it sucks that this doesn't happen more often, like in this day and age where everything is spoiled, like 5 months before the movie comes out, the trailer gives away the ending. Like, man, it was so I forget like the when this came out, but I'm pretty sure I saw it pretty early on. I'm
not even sure if I ever saw a trailer for this actually, which is weird given that I was anticipating that when it came out. But
so wait, did it come out in 2012, or is that when it got shelved?
No, that's when it came out. It came out in like March time.
Okay.
2012.
All right, yeah, because I was gonna say I think I was still living at home when I saw this, which one of the great things about living out in LA is like all those hard to find movies are usually generally playing around here somewhere. But I remember like really going out of my way to try and find a theater that was playing this, and luckily I found it, and man, it was just so cool, like not knowing anything about it other than it's like, oh, awesome horror movie, Joss Whedon, I'm in. And then the places it goes and everything. Yeah, the last like 30 minutes and everything it does, which is the sort of thing where if they did put a single moment of any of that in the trailer, they were fools for putting it in there. Like that entire last act is batshit insane and just not what you kind of expect going in, I don't think. And when so there's a moment before that kind of starts happening where I legitimately thought the movie was over. Like I thought like, oh wow, we're done. And then it goes into like so much more that is so awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I mean I love Scream. We've not done Scream in the show yet. We will at some point. We'll do the Scream movies, of course we will. But I actually prefer this to Scream as a satire to horror movies, like as a deconstruction of the trope. Because I mean, it's kind of debatable which one you like, because Scream is still kind of taking itself serious to a point. And not that this doesn't take itself seriously, but this is definitely going much further with it and saying, oh no, we're going wacky with the premise and we're doing all these other things. And the way it calls out a lot of tropes that even Scream wouldn't do. Because Scream is, again, just a slasher sort of deconstruction, whereas this is a deconstruction of as many horror movies as possible. And it works fantastically. It's very funny. It's very, like,
honestly, if you put this, like, obviously we call this a horror comedy, and it's debatable how much of a comedy you think it is, but I think if you wanted to call it a straight comedy, you could. It is that funny. It is that. It's frequently so funny that you could do that, and it.
Yeah.
And what I love is a lot of the laughs come from like the horror tropes. Like if you know horror movies, it's even funnier than it would be if you didn't.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would say is like I'm not sure if you're not like, you know, entrenched, as like a horror loving nerd, like how like I think you would still, you know, like stuff about this, and there's still like enough, you know, kind of pop culture osmosis horror stuff that you would understand. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder how much like, you know, people would really appreciate or enjoy it if, you know, they're not, you know, big time horror loving dudes.
Yeah, I feel like people who aren't into horror would probably come out going, yeah, that was okay, that was a 7.
Yeah.
I feel that's what they'd come out saying. Whereas I feel like if you're a horror fan, you come out of this and you're feeling a lot more. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's horror fans who hate it for whatever reason, because it's, you know, every movie, even the best movies have the detractors, and even the worst movies have their lovers for some strange reason. And sometimes I'm in the minority, that's okay, but I feel like for most horror fans, like coming out of this, if you like the sense of humor that it's bringing to the table, you come out loving a lot of what it does.
Yeah.
So cast is great. There's some Whedon regulars in there. Amy Acker is one of the scientists down the pit. Tom Link's even down there. You got Fran Kranz, one of the college students. He was in Dollhouse. He's pretty good.
Oh, okay.
So you got a few regulars creeping in here or there. That said, the rest of the cast are all pretty. Obviously, we mentioned Hemsworth. I think one of my favorite things it does with the characters actually is the college students. They're actually all pretty reasonable, normal, middle ground people, but part of the whole thing is that they try and turn them into the archetypes. They try and make one of them the slutty blonde when she's not really the slutty blonde. They try and make one the last final virgin, even though she's not a virgin. They try and make Chris Hemsworth the dumb big jock, even though he's not actually a dumb guy. Like, you know, he's at the start of the movie, he's like, no, don't read that philosophy book. Read this one. This one's much more. Like, you know, he's definitely not that character. But they try and fit them into those roles to make their horror, you know, thing work. So no, it does all that kind of stuff. Really fun, and I feel like I'm just dancing around spoilers now. So with that said, I think we will dive head on first into the plot of Cabin in the Woods, so I can actually talk about things as we go. So where to begin? Joe, I want to talk about so the overall plot of this movie is that to appease the old ones, the old gods who are beneath the earth, this secret organization have to give essentially sacrificial offerings. Kind of like, because at one point someone even cracks a joke about, oh, I missed the day when you could just throw someone in a volcano. And so the idea this is now they have to sacrifice people, but they have to do it in a way that entertains them. It can't just be kill them. It has to be, no, they go through all the motions and the rules like a horror movie. So, and you have them in different countries. You have Japan doing theirs, and Japan's doing the scary, creepy ghost. But this is the American station, and they've got the kids at the cabin in the woods, and they have to sacrifice them. And part of that is that they have to let the kids pick what their enemy's going to be. So they go into the basement, and the idea is that everything in the basement's like a trigger for one of the enemies. So it's like, you know, one's like the Book of the Dead, you know, to compare it to another horror movie, and that would like trigger one thing. One's like it's a sphere, but it's basically the cube from Hellraiser. And there's like a pyramid head type character is one of them, and it's all these different things. They pick their thing, they go through it, but of course our characters will uncover what's actually going on. Partly because the pothead is the stuff he's smoking is so strong that he actually counteracts all of the drugs that they pump into the atmosphere to make them susceptible to what's going on. And we end up going down into the lab, and all sorts of crazy shenanigans unfold. Honestly, the first thing I want to talk about as a nerd is I want to talk about the board, because one of the fun things they do early on is all the workers in this place are all betting on which thing they're going to pick, because they're all watching this big monitor, this big TV they've got. And they're all taking bets. They've got this big board out of all the different possibilities.
Like, this movie is the reason why the pause button was invented. like, yeah, as a nerd, you just really want to, like, see everything that's on the board. And then later when, you know, you start getting kind of, you know, into the action scenes with, like, the little glimpses and stuff of the monsters, it's like, there's so much going on that it just fills you with so much glee to just pause it and look around and see all the little jokes and stuff. And
guess what I just googled?
the board.
Yeah. Oh, someone actually
Broke it down.
proper version of it. Right, so I'm looking at the board. I just want to talk, because what I love is that you actually see most of what's on this board by the end of the movie, even if it's just a small like thing in the background. You see a lot of them. There's two that I think you don't see, although actually on this viewing I caught one that might be one of them actually.
Okay.
And there's a few you don't see, I think, but well, I'll just read them all off. Here's all the options, right? So you got werewolf, alien beast, mutants, wraiths, zombies, reptiles, reptilicus? I don't know, it's not hard to read that one, but it's something that way. Clowns, witches, sexy witches, that's a separate option. Demons, hell lord, angry something tree, Mulstink.
Okay, interesting.
Giant snake, you see that one for sure. Deadites, that's a nice little reference. So obviously, I don't think they show that one because rights, but they can put it in as a joke. This is my favorite one on the board. The next one, Kevin. That's really funny, but what I love about it is it actually makes a lot of sense because it's basically the Michael or Jason, but it's just Kevin. I didn't think you saw him, but actually later on, when all the stuff's going down in the lab, there's like one of the security cameras. You see someone like being like suffocated with a plastic bag. I think that might be Kevin doing that because he looks like a normal dude.
Okay, all right.
Like I say, I've seen this a few times now, so now I'm paying attention, looking for more. Mummy, the Bride, the Scarecrow folk.
Ooh, I think we actually get a glimpse of those. I thought those are pretty cool.
One that we don't see, and I wish we did, honestly, is Snowman. I wish we saw the Snowman.
That would be cool.
Dragon Bat, we got that one. Vampires, dismemberment goblins, Sugar Plum Fairy, Mer-Man. We definitely see the Mer-Man. There's some good Mer-Man jokes.
Maybe I was gonna ask you later on like what your favorite joke in the movie is, and I feel like that one is so hard to beat, but there are a couple other really good ones. But that is such amazing payoff.
Yeah, because obviously one of the guys, Whitford's character,
he's like obsessed with the Mer-Man. He like keeps wanting to see him and never gets to.
He bets on the Mer-Man every single year and never wins. And then of course you get this payoff at the end where he's killed by a Mer-Man. And it's a great thing because it's amazing. The smoke's there and you sort of see him and the music gets kind of sweet, like he's finally getting his wish, but he's just, oh come on, you gotta be kidding me, and then he gets killed. It's fantastic. The reanimated unicorn, that may be my favourite. The unicorn scene is out of nowhere and it cracked me up. Huron, I'm not sure what that is. Wendigo / Yeti / Sasquatch, all the same thing. Dolls, that's a good one. The Doctors, zombie redneck torture family, that's the one they actually pick.
The Buckners, I believe.
The Hack-O-Lantern, the Giant, and then the Twins. Which one do you think the Creepy Mask family are?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I feel like they're on this board because I feel like they didn't just throw in random things as well. Well, that's interesting.
Was there one for the robot thing?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it was like a robot scorpion thing.
Yeah.
Is that
the Huron? Maybe.
Is that? Yeah, maybe that's that, or maybe that's. No, that's not. No, that scorpion's not a reptile. Can't be that. But yeah, maybe Huron. That could be that.
It's that's actually one of the things I was thinking of with this movie. It almost feels unfair that there are like so many movies that we watch that just have like bland, unforgettable villains or whatever, and this has
like 50.
Like like so many amazing creatures that, like, honestly, everyone that we see in this movie, I'm like, I want to see more of that thing. Like I like.
The vast majority of them, Robot Scorpion, yes, that creepy like Mask family. I mean, they're basically just like a version of the Strangers like characters, but like, yeah, sure, like their version of Pinhead with the buzzsaw blades in his head. Sure, yeah, give me more of him. Yeah, I'll take him.
Yeah, and like like you said, the unicorn, the Mer-Man, the like ballet with just like teeth, the ballet dance with like teeth for face.
Yeah. She was very like Silent Hill looking, I thought.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, she was great. I like the bat actually. The bat seems really simple, but I like how just sort of demonic it feels.
It's cool, yeah.
I actually kind of like that you don't see any. The vampires are on the board, and you don't see any, and I think that's kind of almost a joke because Whedon's known for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's like the one thing you don't really see is the vampires, unless I mean maybe you can see them like somewhere in the corner or whatever, but they're certainly not obvious.
Yeah.
But no, I also I like that when the family's picked and the one of the whoever voted for zombies was like, hey, I picked zombies. Like, no. These are the tortured redneck family zombies. Completely different species here. That's different picks. Very specific.
Yeah, I like that. That was good too.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, it works. It actually makes complete sense because they have a different trigger.
Yeah, they're like more a magical, like, kind of like seemed like cursed from hell kind of thing.
Which actually leads me to kind of one of my favorite running gags in the movie. Well, not running gags, but one of my favorite things it does with the humor is that the stoner, he's constantly calling out the bullshit. He's constantly saying things that make complete sense. Like at one point, like, right, we all need to stay together, and then they pump some drugs into the room to make them change their mind. He's like, oh no, actually we should split up. And he's like, should we? And then, but earlier on, when they're reading the book, he's like, we shouldn't be reading this, and he keeps saying that, and then it gets to, oh, this next part's in Latin, and he's like, I'm drawing the goddamn line, we are not reading the effing Latin. Like he's making complete sense. He's like calling out all the stupid like horror movie ideas. It's great.
And I love how they're playing with the idea that these characters are tropes, but like they're not really supposed to be, but they're slowly being force fed into their roles. Like there's one scene with the stoner guy, I forget, like he says something and then like someone's like, what'd you say? And he's like, Pop-Tarts. Wait, what? Like all of a sudden, like he starts acting like he was making sense at first, and then he's like getting like real stonery, like, oh, I got the munchies kind of guy. And,
and there's other things because they're feeding like hormones and stuff to like make the horny couple hornier and stuff like that. Just all these little things to make them, because at one point as well, I think Dana, the sort of the quote unquote final girl, she like at one point almost says she's never had sex, and she's like, wait, that's not right. I don't mean that. I've had sex. Like, it was kind of like this little moment where whatever they're giving her is kind of like making her say that, and it's such a fun idea. And obviously the whole metaphor here, right? Just to get this out in the open, is we are the old gods. The audience are the old gods. We are the ones that are being appeased, and the director, who's played by Sigourney Weaver, she's the one running this whole thing, is literally a movie director. That it's literally, that's the idea. And all of the different options, and then you have all the different countries doing their options as well, and all the other countries have failed, and it's down to just this one place. They have to succeed, or the world's going to be destroyed. The old gods will not be pleased. And it's just this idea that because we keep using the same ideas, that eventually, like, everyone's bored of all of them, and they stop working, they stop being effective. And it's a very critical look at how horror movies have kept doing the same thing, largely. For a long time. And I kind of agree with it, but at the same time, like, I still kind of want a new Friday the 13th movie. I'm definitely part of the problem in that sense, but obviously new ideas are fantastic. So,
sure. Yeah, and I think there's like, there are ways to, pay homage to like kind of the old style and way of doing things and still having it feel kind of, new and stuff. And I mean, as long as something is done well, it doesn't necessarily have to like break the mold every time. But that's something I didn't like notice like on my like first viewings. Like obviously, you get the idea that they're playing off horror tropes and stuff, but I think like after a while I started realizing like, oh no, this is like also just kind of like a commentary on like entertainment and storytelling in general. Like it doesn't necessarily have to apply to just like horror,
That's true. Yeah.
Like you can see it just in general, like hey, these like we're like these gods that are making these fictional characters kind of dance for us, and I don't know, maybe that's not the way it should be or whatever, but it's a lot of like really interesting, smart ideas that I think like this is like it works on its own level as just being a like fun funny horror movie, but there's also like, oh, there's also like some really like smart, cool, interesting stuff in here as well.
Yeah, even just the idea there's a lab underneath the cabin that's doing all this, and there's this, this just storage room with all these cubes filled with all these monsters. Like,
yeah,
that's really good stuff. In fact, it's probably one of the creepiest scenes in the movie. Actually, is when they're first in that cube and they're looking at it, and like the other things will just appear out of the darkness, and then the little girl's there, then the pinhead looking dude's there.
And it's interesting that, like, ultimately the Bruckners are they're not like the real enemy here. Like, the enemy are these these people, this lab. Like, they he could have escaped like on the bike or whatever, or
the filmmakers.
Yeah, they're the ones that are torturing these people.
Actually, maybe I shouldn't say Sigourney Weaver's literally the director. She's more like the producer. She's the head of the studio.
Okay.
And the two guys in the room are the directors. Arguably is more the case, but regardless, it's no, it's it plays with all that stuff wonderfully. There's so many little moments where it pokes fun at the ideas. Obviously, there's some more overt things where Chris Hemsworth tries to like drive the bike to get over the clearing, and he just hits the force field that's keeping them inside.
Yeah.
And like, oh shit, that's weird. What did he hit? What did he hit? He didn't hit anything. This is weird. What's happening?
And that was like such a great scene, like seeing it for the first time and being like, holy shit, I did not see that coming.
And again, just going back to the characters acting out of character because they're being like convinced to. Like, we get before the couple leave to have sex, like, what's her name? Jules. She's like just dancing in front of the fireplace like a stripper, and like the other characters are just watching, like, what the hell is she doing? Why is she doing this? She never does this. This is weird. It's just, it's kind of like how Final Girls played with the whole idea of like the slutty character attracting the killer. This was doing different things with the same tropes, and it was kind of working.
Like, Final Girls definitely feels kind of like a spiritual successor to this movie in some ways. Like, I mean, we might have still gotten it without this movie, but I don't know. They kind of feel like they go hand in hand. The way they just find really interesting ways to talk about like the genre and tropes and stuff. Yeah.
So you want to talk about favorite jokes, favorite comedy moments? I think one of my, this is a small favorite I'd forgotten about that I really like. When they read the journal that triggers the zombie family, one of the things it mentions is that the man got the husband bulb, right? And then later on, it's just because they've set up Dana and the guy she doesn't know, Holden. And they're kind of like, they're kind of flirting a little bit. And at one point, the storer just walks past and says, he has husband bulge. And it's just this funny little moment. It's really good stuff.
That's really good. I think, I mean, other than the Mer-Man, which is so great.
And the unicorn.
And the unicorn being awesome. But the Harbinger is just so funny.
Oh, yeah, when he's on the speakerphone. Oh my god, yeah. And they're listening to him and they're laughing their heads off because he's so over the top. Which again is one of those tropes. He's basically, we did Friday the 13th 1 and 2 recently, and he's basically Ralph. He's basically the guy's like, oh, it's got a death curse. You can't go up there. And he takes his job seriously. Which actually reminds me of one of my other funny lines from the Stoner. It's when they're leaving. He's like, I hear the railroad's coming through here anytime now. That cracked me up. It's full of gems like that. There's really, really good stuff. At one point when they start dancing in the cabin, it cuts to the controllers and they're dancing as well. Just kind of like that's good. When they're having sex and like everyone, like, it cuts to like she's about to take her top off and like the entire room's filled with all these lab technicians all just watching and staring. And again, it's the kind of this meta commentary that they're all just ogling at the potential boobs. Like, that's all it is. But it's really smartly done in that sense. So no, it really, really, really funny. I love the opening title as well. I think the way the title comes up is just really funny.
Oh yeah,
because they're just talking about his baby proofing. He's like, "Oh, do you want to come over this weekend?" And it's like just after a random sentence, it just comes up, and it says "Cabin in the Woods."
Yeah, it's so mundane, and then like it just appears like this giant epic title. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good. Even the introduction to the characters is quite good because it does a really quick job of explaining to you that these characters aren't exactly the stereotypes, because you know, like I say, the jock guy is actually quite smart, and he gives these, and he even jokes though. He even jokes when he thinks his girlfriend's got the books. He does that little bit where he's like, "Who told you about these? Who told you about these?" And it's pretty funny. It's a nice introduction to the characters, and you get them.
And you know what I love is, I feel like the movie does such a good job of like replicating, you know, what we would think of as like a standard horror movie, that like the first, you know, couple of times that I watch it, I always get sucked in, and then I forget that, you know, these people are acting out of character until someone kind of points it out. They're like, you know, why is, you know, like, yeah, I think the, you know, the stoner is like, why is like Chris Hemsworth like acting like a, you know, like drunk like jock when he's like, you know, studying like what do you call it, like philosophy or something.
I think
like
it was
that.
sociology specifically he was studying.
And but like the movie, like I like I feel like the first like couple of times I watched it, I get so sucked in, I don't even really notice, because it feels like you're watching a horror movie, and then someone pointed out like, this is wrong, right? And you're like, yeah, it is. Like that beginning, these people were not these people, and now they're acting totally different. It's just it's really, really well done.
Yeah, it sets it up well enough that when it starts subverting things, it's not only subverting things in a meta way, it's subverting the characters themselves that have already been set up in the movie, and that really works. And then all five of them, I think, are likable to varying degrees as well, which is great. So
yeah, there's no one's like really like annoying or jerky or anything. Like they're all people you like.
Even the lab people, they're all pretty likable. The two guys are great. Amy Acker's good. The bodyguard guy, who's kind of morally a little bit not sure if like we should be taking so much pleasure in what we're doing. Like, yeah, he's got the moral compass. I don't know if he's like specifically supposed to represent the you know, the complaints that get sent into horror movies. Like, oh, these are too violent. Like, our kids shouldn't be seeing this. Like, maybe he represents that. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm stretching at that point. I almost want like sequels, but when I say I want sequels, I want the other countries. I want, but not the same year. I want like a prequel essentially with like, okay, I want Japan and like do you know how like Japan like became big for horror when The Ring came out? Like before that, like I mean there are some classic Japanese horror movies, but I kind of like the idea that they only started to do it in 1998, and like what was that first year like when they had their idea? Like like maybe like Japan had always been doing it, but they'd gotten really bad and they'd been failing every single year for decades, and then someone had this idea for the videotape or something, and then you see what it played out like. I don't know. Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things where, you know, a lot of times when he's like a really good like standalone horror movie, it's like, all right, this is good, but I don't know if I necessarily need more. And then this is like a weird case where it's like, oh, like there's so much they could explore, but I don't know. How I'd feel about a sequel. Like, it
kind of defeats the point of the movie if you make a sequel. It absolutely does. But at the same time, it's so full of great ideas that you can't help but feel like so many of these ideas can make movies on their own. Like
I feel really like I feel like maybe I'd kind of like it would have to be a prequel series, but like maybe like I don't know, like 6-episode Netflix series that's kind of almost like a workplace sitcom or something, like The Office, but like for these tech guys.
See if you give me Jenkins and Whitford and like a prequel series where they're just doing like what is a successful year like when they actually succeed? You know, like I don't know, like was there something they took off the board? Did they ban an option because it got too bad one year or something? Like, you know, was that? I don't know. Like, there's so many options, but at the same time, it kind of defeats the purpose. And I kind of like the idea of leaving it as a standalone movie that we never touch. It's just that's what it is. It's fantastic, and we never go back to it. That could be good. So no, it's good stuff. And I love like just the contrast. Like, see when they go down into the lab and they'll stand. It's almost a little bit Resident Evil, actually, the idea that there's a lab underneath, and because they get down there and they're both like dirty, they're covered in blood and stuff, but they're standing in this ultra clean and sterile lab, this hallway, and it's like, you know, and all of a sudden there's a SWAT team like trying to mow them down.
And I like how gruesome it gets, because up until then, like there'd been, you know, some death and stuff, but it wasn't like super bloody. Like I don't know, it feels like it could have been like PG-13 up until then, but then all of a sudden it gets into like an R movie.
Well, there's that moment where like they're in the little control room and you realize what they're about to do, because I think even the first time it hits you what they're about to do.
Oh yeah, because like just when they're kind of going through and seeing all the things and the like cubes or cells or whatever, I remember when I first thought, like I had this thought of like, oh man, there's so much cool stuff in here. I want to see like all of these things come out, and then once you kind of get the inkling that like, holy shit, are they gonna let them out? Like you're like, yes.
And all the doors open, and you just have this barrage of like a giant snake, the bat, the vampires, the vampires, but the zombies, and like all the other things, the robot scorpion thing. There's a killer clown walking around that you see. Yeah. I love the entrance of the creepy family with the white masks. Like they're really good. Like the whole everything, like it's great. And I love that if you're really paying attention during the security camera moments, you can kind of see what some of them are doing. Like one of the powers seems to be that one of the villains makes someone kill themselves. Like you can just see that in one of the cameras, and that's what it looks like. Yeah. And then the creepy family are setting, like they're dousing someone in gasoline. They're about to set them on fire. There's just you can look for all these little things. It's like it's a treasure trove if you're into all this stuff. Yeah, it's great.
I love there's just so much blood. There's like one scene where you get the kind of, you see this in a lot of movies where like like a hand like slams against like a window or whatever, but there's just like in this there's so much blood on the window. It's like you don't even fully see the hand. You just see like kind of like this bloody imprint like taking shape there. It's really, really cool.
It's that image, and it's in and of itself is almost like a metaphor for oversaturation.
Yeah.
You can't even see the hand properly because there's just blood everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And I love it actually. See when it comes back to that hallway after the carnage has happened, and like the characters walk out into it, and it's just covered in blood, and there's just like some intestines like on the floor, and it's just a bloodbath. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. It's so good. But yeah, I mean that's just Cabin in the Woods. Oh, I mean obviously yeah. There's the ending where they sort of have a showdown with Sigourney Weaver, and it's like it's almost the weakest part of the movie, just because it's kind of like just the way to end it now. But like,
yeah, it's like I feel like that's how they had to end it. But it does feel weird because we just got so much thrown at us, and then all of a sudden it's still like a pretty crazy ending. But yeah, it is like a little quieter. It is just these kind of three people, and then like like one or two monsters kind of come, because then you get the werewolf comes, and the that's when the little girl shows up as well, right?
From the family,
from the Bruckners. Yeah. So, but we just had like this big, mass of monsters, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, there's a few less, but it does feel like the right way that it should have ended. Like,
oh yeah, because I mean it ends with basically saying, yeah, let's not do this anymore, and then that's what the giant hand coming up at the end is. But it works really well. I can't believe they even mentioned the wolf makeout scene.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Which he doesn't even call it wolf. He's like, oh, make out with that. What was it he says? Is it squirrel?
Moose. I forget something.
I think it's a moose. Yeah, it's like, have you ever seen a moose? It's like, yeah, no.
And then it's like, yeah, wow, she's really going for it.
Yeah. But again, I think that shows you that the drugs are kicking in, and she's like starting to become this character. But the movie has so much energy. I feel like there's so much like the way she goes up to, like, because it intentionally kind of echoes that classic kind of, oh, we're going to go up her body as she walks towards it all sexy, and it's kind of, but it's kind of the point. The point is that they're emulating that kind of thing, and but there's so much energy, like the music that plays, the way it kind of comes into it. It never feels like it's slowing down. I think the pacing in this movie is like perfect.
It's great. There really isn't a dull moment at all, and it's so rewatchable. Like, there are movies that I like that I really, really like, but sometimes you gotta be like in the right mood to watch them, and this is just one of those anytime movies. Like, if I just get a whiff that it's on, or I just really need something like safe and comforting, this is such like a little joy to put on and watch, like from start to finish.
Yeah, it is so tightly scripted, so tightly edited, and it never wastes a minute. And I think it's perfect that we get to a point where we're almost about to get bored of the family chasing the characters, and that's when, like, a lot of people think they've succeeded. They're all partying and celebrating.
Oh, yeah, and that's what
yeah,
and I'm sorry. That's what I meant when I said earlier. Like, when I first watched this, I thought, okay, this is the end of the movie. Which, if it did end there, it still would have been like, all right, yeah, that was a cool movie. But it goes into like the last little bit just elevates it.
As soon as it takes her, because Marty shows up and takes her into the trap door. As soon as they're in there, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's like things down here, and I can rewire it, and we can go down." Like, it just goes off. It's like it almost is like, yeah, the rest of the movie was fun up until this point, but this is where it was going. This is what it's about now. And like it doesn't feel like it's a left turn for the sake of a left turn. Just like, no, this is naturally where it was going to go. But it's just such a fun, like, crazy place to take the movie.
Yeah.
Oh. No, it works on multiple levels. It's really funny. It's a good satire. Characters are all likable, and it works in the sense of just getting crazier and crazier as it goes. Which is something I tend to try and avoid a phrase like that, because it just sounds like a marketing blurb. But this movie really does. Like, I feel like if you go in blind, you start watching it. I don't think you see this lab with all these different monsters like coming out at once and all that crazy stuff.
You know, it's so crazy. I feel like you don't get this a lot in movies, but and, I mean, who knows if this is true or not, but it feels like there wasn't anything that they had to leave out or that they couldn't do. Like, there's so many ideas on here. Like, it's hard to imagine that.
That's the thing. There probably was, and it's just like, this is just like, they had even more ideas that would have been great, like Madame Snowman, for example. But you know, they had limitations, and that's okay. In fact, you could even argue that the way the movie progresses from being like the simple, just the family, and then going down to the lab, and then all the monsters coming in, you could almost take that as a commentary itself on the idea that when you run out of ideas, you just start throwing everything.
Throw everything.
Yeah, you could, I actually think that works. That's a really good little other way to look at it. Yeah. So, no, I guess we'll get to the ratings. And I'm sure we've left stuff out because the movie's so packed with little great details. So by all means, give us your own comments and stuff. But yeah, so ratings. Tim, what would you give Cabin in the Woods out of 10?
You know, sometimes it's tough giving out these scores, but I think that I have to give it a perfect 10 because
Whoa, okay.
Honestly, I don't think, like, I can't think of anything wrong. Because, you know, I feel like when I like something, you know, and it's going to reach a 10 level, I kind of have to sit back and say, all right, if there's one thing about this that really bugs me or irks me or that I don't like, you know, like I almost kind of want to find a reason to knock it down a bit, but I don't think I can say that in this movie. Like, I don't think there's anything that I don't like about it.
All right, okay. I'm not going to go with the perfect 10. I actually will give you a couple of, admittedly small complaints, but like I say, I think the final showdown with Sigourney Weaver is actually just kind of a tussle. You know, after everything else, it's just a little tussle. And then the other thing I'd maybe criticise a little bit is that I think what they pick, and I think this is partly intentional, but I think the ones they pick, the zombie family, are one of the least interesting things on the board. Like, almost everything else I thought was more interesting.
I think that's fair, and I do think actually rewatching it, I noticed. I mean, maybe it's just my TV or something, but it felt like it was filmed very dark whenever there were scenes with the family in the woods and stuff. And I'm not sure if, I mean, again, maybe my TV just sucks, or, but I also didn't know if that was almost like a commentary on like sometimes how like bad these movies are filmed or look. But in a weird way, I do think that kind of enhances it. Like it to a point where it's like, you know, this thing that you think the movie's about is not what it's about. You know what I mean? Like,
oh sure, yeah. I've had one lot more I left out. Just this is just, again, the people in the control room manipulating things. Is that they almost have sex and then they don't, so they pump more pheromones into the air, and then they put on like a light, a little, because he's like, "Oh, watch the master work," and he makes this little sort of moonlight patch that's really romantic, and I was like, "Oh, this is really good." But no, I love it though. I'm looking for things to criticize. I'm looking for things to sort of take it down a little bit. But for me, it is a solid 9 out of 10.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, which is amazing. 9 is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing movie. I love Cabin in the Woods. I thoroughly recommend it. And I think if you're a fan of the Whedon humor, as I am, it is, you know. Which, by the way, just once again, he did create the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just for the record. So there you go. That is the Cabin in the Woods. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. Some of the bonuses you get over there if you do sign up, especially at the $5 tier, which is the meatier one, you get access to the monthly vote, where you get to vote on an episode. Next month's vote is all themed on winter movies, so people are voting on that up until the end of the month. You also get access to the crypt, which means you can submit movies that will go into this, what we call the crypt, which is a to-do list of movies, which you can see, which is a public list. I'll make sure links for that start going out soon. But yeah, so you can do that. And yeah, and that keeps us going. That keeps us making episodes and coming back, and keeps me putting up with Tim, because, you know, sometimes, guys, it's a struggle. You like the boy, you absolute freaking maniac.
Boy's great.
But that's us, guys, so thank you once again for watching or listening, because there's the audio feed if you've been listening to it as well. So thank you very much. Keep watching scary movies. We'll see you next time. The boy is atrocious.